Honestly, Fooled by the FOMO is a pretty stupid name when you think about it, but I'm just doing it for the alliteration. Hey, I'm Alex Ratcliffe from Board Game Co., and this is Fooled by the FOMO, the start of a video series in which you probably will not see the second video for quite some time. I say for quite some time because what this video is it's a video of the Kickstarter games, the crowdfunding projects that I've backed that I haven't even sat down and played, with one exception. They're the games that I haven't played. I got them, I backed them, I was excited about them. They landed at my doorstep, they sat on my shelf, and now time has gone by and they haven't been tabled. In essence, I've been fooled by the FOMO. I've been fooled by the fear of missing out. I wanted the game, it seemed shiny, I had to have it, rather than wait, get on the secondary market, try this, try that, or just not own it at all. And so I did what I needed to do and I backed those games. And obviously I didn't need to do those things because I haven't even played these games. Now the list criteria here is going to be twofold. First of all, maybe threefold, I don't even know, we'll find out. So let's go through what the list criteria is. Number one is, with one exception, they are games I have not played. This does not refer to games I should be playing more. This does not refer to expansions I haven't yet gotten to. Ankh, I've played the base game like 10 times, but I haven't played the expansion yet, so does that count? It doesn't count, that's the short answer. That's number one. So it has to be referring to games that I have not played, again with one exception. Number two is, it does not count things that have recently shown up. In other words, if something showed up 2 weeks ago, it's okay. I cannot play a game for 2 weeks and still have the best of intentions and hopefully get to it. There's actually a few that fall into the category because I've gotten a recent spurt of additions that have started showing up. So there'll be like 4 or 5 other titles if I was counting things from the past 2 weeks. I'm not doing so. This has to be games that have been sitting around for long enough for me to say that I've been fooled by the FOMO. Again, a stupid title, but the alliteration is not bad. So those are the two criteria. I don't think there's a third criteria, but that's basically it. As far as the reason you will not see the second video in this series for quite some time is I back a lot of games. If you follow the What I Backed videos that I do once a month, I probably back on average 5 to 7 games a month. And yet, looking over the past year and a half of Kickstarters that I have, I couldn't even get to 10 games. 10-ish, we'll explain. I could get to 10-ish games that I actually hadn't played. Meaning for all the other games that I have not played in my collection, and there are too many of them, turns out, looking at just the little data I have, it turns out I actually do play the Kickstarter games that I get, for the most part. Not these 10, but for the most part. Which means, if I'm trying to do 10 games in a single video, you might have to wait another 6 to 12 months before doing this video again is even relevant. Don't worry, I'll find plenty of other ways to talk about Kickstarters, but that's just basically what's going on here. So, let's start this off. And the first 2 on this list have caveats. Well, the first 2 is technically the first 3, I'll explain. So, the first one, number 10. Number 10 is going to be 2 games lumped together because they fall into a recent enough category that they're halfway between the point where I feel I should have played it since it arrived, but also maybe not. They're halfway. And only one of them's here, the other one is currently lent out. But we have In Too Deep from Burnt Island Games and Townsfolk Tussle. In Too Deep, now I have played this originally, this is not the exception. I have played the original prototype, I don't count that. If I just play the prototype and I get you, I still have to play you again. Otherwise, great, I played the prototype. Why did I actually back you though? So In Too Deep from Burnt Island Games, fantastic game of trying to solve the logical puzzles of making things match up. You have to make a certain situation occur on the board state, and you have to do so as efficiently as possible, and you're trying to create these events by moving this, using that, manipulating that, using their abilities. Very fascinating puzzle of a game that's going on. And since it's shown up, I haven't played it. Now again, this is number 10 on the list because this, along with Townsfolk Tussle that's not currently here, fall into a similar enough category that they've arrived recently enough that I don't yet know if I have or haven't gotten them. Both those games, multiple times over the past few months, I've meant to get tabled and they didn't get picked. And while that's true for a lot of other games on this list, these ones are recent enough that I still think that they only halfway count, which is why I'm putting them at number 10. In Too Deep, I would love to dive down into again. It's been a while. I really enjoyed it. It's a short, accessible, easy-to-table game. And then Townsfolk Tussle is a little bit longer if you're playing the full 4 bosses. Honestly, I don't even need to enjoy that game. Townsfolk Tussle is a boss fighting experience in which you'll be taking down the ruffian in the game across 4 different boss fights, leveling up as you go. And while the full-length game, which is going to come in at roughly 3 hours-ish, is the ideal way to play it, playing a single boss fight for an hour or 45 minutes or whatever it is also an enjoyable experience. Maybe 2 boss fights, maybe 3 boss fights. You can get in. You don't have to play the whole thing to have a fun time. And Townsfolk Tussle is delightful, and it's fun, but again, it's recent enough that I'm only counting it as a half strike against the fact that I have not gotten it tabled. Don't get me wrong, if 6 to 12 months from now when I do the second video in the series, if it shows up there, then, or if either of these show up there, then absolutely fooled by the FOMO. But it's a stupid title. I can't get over. Every time I say it, I feel like I feel like I'm trying to condense a title into... It works. It's not wrong. I just don't like the title. I'm still going to use it at this point, because I've said it 4 times in this video. I can't not use it, because it would be really confusing. So, that's number 1. Townsfolk, Tussle, and In Too Deep. Number 2 is actually one of the higher offenders on this list, but I'm including it here earlier on because I have played it. It's the only one on this list that I really have played and count as a play post getting the actual game. And that is Project Elite. Project Elite from Command Games is one that I was incredibly excited to back this game. I played the original game, loved the original game, found the real-time aspects of the game as you roll dice, as you try to manipulate, move your troops around the board, and frantically deal with the aliens that are charging forward as you roll your dice trying to kill them. A lot of fun. A great game. One that I played the original from Artipia Games, and then one that I dove into the new version of Command twice, maybe? I think twice, when I first got it. And that was a long time ago. That was a year and a half ago, and I haven't played it since. Again, there are games here that I've played, and the games I want to play more, but this is the only one that's so egregious in how much I like it, how much I went all in on this game, how much I like the original, how excited I was to table it, and then I've played it like once or twice when I first got it, and have not tabled, at least twice, I played it at least twice, but have not tabled it since. Which is a shame. It's a real shame. And it's to the point where every time I'm doing my Games Leaving the Collection videos right now, I sit here and look at Project Elite, and I sit there and say, does it deserve to leave? Like, I know I love the game. From having played it, I know I love the game. It's such a good game. But I'm also not playing it, and that's a vicious strike against any single game, no matter how good you are. Part of it is the real-time element. I need the right group of people. Part of it is the player count. I don't find that this game plays as well with 2. I find 3 to 5 is kind of... 5 is a little messy. 3 to 4 is ideally the sweet spot for it. And I have to be playing it with 3 to 4 people who are fine with real-time games, which does make it harder based on the people in my game group. So some of it is situational, but it's been a year and a half since I played it last. For a game that I supposedly like this much, for a game that is this much content for... I don't know. I like my big box Command games, make no mistake. Do I actually like this one? Again, I think the answer is yes. I think it's a people problem. But, like, if I could play this solo, this would be on the table right now. If I could enjoy it solo, I should say, this would be on the table right now being played. I think I just need new friends, which is a regular problem, but I don't know. I just feel I like this game enough that I should have been playing this one more. Whatever. It is what it is. So, moving on from there to number 8. Number 8, let's go with Cloudspire. Now, Cloudspire is a game that I've tried to table it 3 times. Cloudspire is a game that, at this point, I'm kind of at the point where the next time I go to a convention, I want to, like, sit down at the Ship Theory booth and say, teach me Cloudspire, I want to play this. In fact, I should do that. I'm going to Origin shortly enough. I should actually sit down with Ship Theory Games and have them teach me Cloudspire. Don't get me wrong, if I wanted to persevere hard enough, I could dive into Cloudspire and make it happen. But here's the balance, and this is very much a first world problem. It's the it's the ultimate first world problem, in the sense that this is a combination of I play games, I play a lot of games, and I do content creation problem. See, Cloudspire is a game that is a lot to dive into, it's a lot to table. I've set it up multiple times to table it, started the process of learning it multiple times, and never actually completed the process. The reason it's higher on this list is because I really have tried. It's not fooled by the FOMO, it's fooled by the rulebook. Now, the rulebook is actually not the hardest, but the sequencing, there's a lot going on, and the second Kickstarter had like a newly issued rule, so it means I've read the original rules and the new rules for a game that I've gotten twice now. It's a problem for me. Now, with Cloudspire, if this were, you know, Alex from 3 years ago, I probably would have tabled it by now. Too Many Bones, one of my favorite games of all time, from Ship Theory Games, is a game that I really had to struggle to get down and play. I had to set it up multiple times, read the rulebook multiple times, and eventually get it tabled. The difference then and versus now is this is constantly taking a back seat to other games that are easier to table, and or other games that have obligations attached to them. If it's for upcoming Kickstarter, there's a timeline attached. If it's a review copy sent by a publisher. If it's another game of mine that's just easier to dive into, I keep setting up Cloudspire. In fact, this is only half a box compared to the rest of the stuff, because it's literally under my table from when it was set up the last time. I still haven't fully put it away. I really have been trying on this one. But other games that are easier to table or have commitments or timelines attached to them tend to get tabled first. I can dive into any number of other games that are just easier to go through the rules, to get set up, to get running over what Cloudspire is doing. It's supposedly a fantastic game. I've read the rules multiple times. I know all the aspects from the various spires, from building the spires, from removing the chips, from the attack sequencing, from how you move, from the way the waves work. You go back and forth until the wave's totally destroyed. You eventually tear someone's gate down. You have to lower their health markers as you go. Every turn the spires are going to be shooting. There's other chips you can do to extend the range, extend the damage. I've read the rules multiple times. You can go through a market phase and a buying phase and gather all these new cards and chips and all these abilities. There's a lot of fun elements going on in the game, but I haven't actually sat down and tabled it. I've sat down and set it up. I've sat down and read the rules. I have not sat down and played it. So that's my number 8. Number 7, and at this point there are no random order. These 3 were specific because of the order. At this point it's just all over the place. Number 7, we're going to go with A War of Whispers. A War of Whispers, which I'm almost expecting not to like because of the fact, and this is said with no disrespect to Shut Up and Sit Down, but Shut Up and Sit Down, one of the most entertaining YouTube channels that I watch. At the same time, I find that their tastes do not align with my own a majority of the time. There are exceptions. There are fantastic games that they love that I love as well, and there are games that they did not like and that I did not either. We certainly have aligned on occasion, but I would say that more often than not, when they don't like something, there's a decent chance I did. And when they do love something, there's a decent chance I did not find it compelling enough. And they loved War of Whispers. They loved A War of Whispers, and that's why I actually backed it at the time, but this is before I had figured out that my tastes had a large gap between what they liked and what I liked. And so to that end, I mean, again, fantastic channel. I still watch them. They're immensely entertaining. It's just I don't use them for game references, unless you count using the opposite as a game reference. But A War of Whispers is a game that they talked a lot about. The area control puzzle that's going on here is a game that sounds incredibly compelling. Sounds like just the right degree of backstabbery, of betrayal, of area control, of tactics. I'm really, really intrigued by this game, and as you can see, it's still in shrink. I don't have a good answer as to why. It landed on my doorstep when it eventually arrived, maybe 8-9 months ago, and I was like, great, awesome, and I haven't even read the rules, which is a shame. I don't know why. This would have been a great game to play last night. Last night, I was sitting at my shelf, staring around what to play. I was having a game group come, specifically a game group that tends to like area control games, and I picked Ankh. Ankh was a lot of fun, make no mistake. I don't have any regrets, except I do have a bit of the regret of why I didn't table this one. I haven't broken the shrink, I haven't read the rules, I haven't gone to any of the steps necessary to actually sit down and table this game that I had to have at one point in time. So that's A War of Whispers, my number 7. My number 6 is Dinosaur World. Dinosaur World, and you can include in this one Dinosaur World Roar and Write. The roll and write game that comes with them, you can include them at the same time. They're both the same Kickstarter. Neither one has been tabled. I have read the rules for the Roar and Write game. I have not read the rules for Dinosaur World. I have played Dinosaur Island. I like Dinosaur Island. I did not like the art aesthetic of Dinosaur Island, and I backed Dinosaur World hoping that it would be a better version of Dinosaur Island for me. And I don't know where this one will lie. I know the core mechanics of Dinosaur Island, and I know a lot of the core mechanics translate over to Dinosaur World as you try to collect DNA, build dinosaurs, manage your park, manage your guests, make sure your dinosaurs don't eat your guests, or at least don't do so that often so that your park is still reasonably compelling to visit. And I backed it. I went all in. I tend to go all in. Most of the time, if I'm getting a Kickstarter, I do go all in. I figure if I love the game, I want it all. And if I don't like the game, I'm going to sell it anyway, so what do I care? And so Dinosaur World is one that I want to play this. Some of the coins here are fantastic in this game. I don't know what I'm talking about the coins. The game should be the thing that I'm focusing on. And the game is the thing I will focus on when I eventually table it. I don't know when that will happen. Hopefully sooner rather than later. There's always games, and some games get pushed onto the back shelf and they don't get pulled off for quite some time, and I don't have a rhyme or reason as to why that happens. Some games enter the front of my mind immediately, and I get the game, I table it, I sit down, I read the rules, I make it happen. I almost did that with the Roar and Write. Almost. The Roar and Write has not been played, unfortunately. The rulebook has been read. We're ready to go. Is there an app? I think there's an app. Maybe there's an app. Should I play the app to just get it under my belt and then be able to table with my wife? We love playing Roll and Writes or Roar and Writes. Either way, we'll find out. This is another one. That's my number 6. My number 5. My number 5 is another game that this one I have read the rules for. Again, some of these fall into different categories. Titans from Go On Board, the company that made The Witcher, which has done tremendously well. Very excited about that one. That one I will be tabling as soon as I get it. Titans is an area control game that I sat down and read the rules for this in the first week that I got it. So I did make the effort. Again, different games go to different degrees. We have Project Elite, which I actually played. We have Cloudspire, which I've tried multiple times. We have Into Deep, which I know the rules and I'm ready to go. I even reread the rules when I got it back, just to like refresh myself on either what changed or just to dive back into it. But no luck, still hasn't been played. We have A War of Whispers and Dinosaur World that I haven't even tried. And then we have Titans, which I read the rules, got it all prepped, was ready to table it, and it didn't get played. And that was 8 months ago. And I haven't tried tabling it since. Again, the nature of having a lot of unplayed games, good problems to have, there's no complaining here, but the nature of having unplayed games is that at any given point, different games are in the front of my mind as the game I have to play next. There are so many games that I'll read the rulebook again and again and again, and sometimes they continue to be read because I might play it next. Other times another game takes its place, and in the case of Titans, since 8 months ago, kind of left my brain. I remember the card row aspect of the trying to draft orders from a card row as you refill them. I remember thinking that it seemed like you wouldn't have enough actions to do enough things across the course of the game, but I frequently walk into games having that concern, and more often than not, games do show me that they actually are well designed. Once in a while, I'm like, I wanted more actions. I want to play this game. I've heard mixed things. I've heard people who really liked it. I've heard people who are more mixed in it. It kind of does seem to have left the lexicon of excitement. That tends to happen with a lot of games. More often than not, games are just passing through at this point. Some stick around. Some people are continuously and regularly excited about. And others people are excited about for the 2 months that they land. And then they just leave our public imagination. Titan seems to have fallen into that category. I haven't heard anyone talk about it in a while. I haven't seen any screenshots, pictures, anything. Why would I see screenshots? I haven't seen any pictures of anything, any talk about it. I have to play it. I will get it played. The only question is when. Number 5. Number 5, we're up to 5. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, that seems wrong. This was 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. I may have miscounted at some point. We're up to number 4. My number 4 is Petrichor. Number 4 is Petrichor, and this is one that I knew I probably shouldn't have backed, and let's explain a bit more about this. And there definitely was FOMO here. There definitely was being fooled by the FOMO. There definitely was the fear of missing out, not on the game, but on the price. This is coming to you from Mighty Boards, coming from David Chirkrup, and this is Petrichor, a game about clouds and rain and dew. As you move your clouds around the general board, as you water different things, as you deal with your bees and your cows and all these adorable little things in Petrichor. Petrichor, I believe, is the name for like the dew or the moistness after the rain, something like that. Some actual term, not just a made-up word. And this was just a really, really good price for the all-in on Kickstarter. It was a game that I was not planning on backing. It was a game that I backed because it was a really, really good price for the all-in, and the reviews and ratings were positive enough, and the game seemed intriguing enough that I was like, I will sit down and dive into it. Now, it hasn't been there that long, to be fair. This one falls under the range of Townsfolk, Tussle, and Into Deep, but probably above anything else on this list. But I also know that I have no real excitement about tabling it. I'll get to it eventually, I'm sure, but like I backed it because it was a good price, not because it was a game that I was overly compelled by. Doesn't mean it's not a good game. It just means it was a game that I wasn't like, I have to have this game. I was like, that's a good game and it's a good price. And while that's not a bad reason to back things in general, it's also not the best, especially if you have other games competing for your time, energy, and attention. Because the other games, the ones that you are more excited about, will consistently be tabled first. I don't know when I'll play this game. At some point, I'm sure. It's very rare that games leave my collection unplayed. It happens, but it's certainly the exception. More often than not, I got a game for a reason. I got a game because there's reason enough to be incentivized or compelled by it. And to that end, I'm going to make an effort to play that game. And I do want to play Petrichor. The artwork is adorable. The theme is very different. The game has enough meanness and tightness that I've heard good things about it. But for whatever reason it is that goes into our mind as far as the games we are particularly compelled by or not, this one didn't make that list. I don't know why. I don't have a firm answer, but like some games I'm like, I have to play that game. And other games I'm like, I'd like to play that game, and this is the latter. I'd like to play Petrichor. I will play Petrichor. I just don't know when. Number 3. Let's go for number 3 with this one. Give me a second here as I bend down and get this. Ugh. These are bigger and heavier boxes as we go. Number 3 is Ignite. Jeez, sorry about that. Let's push these off to the side. Get myself a little breathing room. Number 3 is Ignite. Ignite is a game that I need to table. Now, I have played this one. I just haven't played it since it actually landed, so it falls into that category. I played it on TTS before it ever delivered, and Ignite is a game that I still need to sit down and table. It's another good example of a game that I could have played last night. I should really sit down and separate out the cards, because one of the problems here is the cards all came in a mixed together way from the manufacturer that actually I need to just sit down and go through the homework assignment of separating out the cards. And this one has drama attached to it. Drama attached that I don't know how I'm going to handle. You see, here's the problem with Ignite, the practical problem. And this is the kind of stuff I don't even want to say in a review video, but these videos are more conversational, so let's talk about it here, because this conversation will not be present when I eventually review this game, and I will eventually review this game. To those who don't know, Ignite is a game that I've talked about in the past. I've really enjoyed it. I've played it online. I think it's a great game. And then Tom Vassell got the game, reviewed the game, and I can't remember the last time I've seen Tom hate a game so much. Well, it's not entirely true. He's burnt some games, but like there are like mass market stuff. From the hobbyist side of things, I don't remember the last time I saw Tom hate a game as much as he hated Ignite. And I disagree with him so much on so many of his points. Not necessarily all of them, but on so many of his points in that review. And the question is, when I eventually review Ignite, and I have to table it more. I have a few games on TTS does not equate to, actually reviewing a game. But I have to play it more. But when I eventually do review Ignite, I can tell you right now my opinion is favorable. How favorable requires multiple plays, because some of the aspects Tom touched upon are some aspects that I do have genuine complaints about. I don't think Ignite is a perfect game. I think Ignite is a very fun game. So just to give you one example, Tom talked about balance. That's entirely possible that's an issue. In general, I find balance is something that I usually mention when I'm concerned that it's there, but I'm rarely playing games enough times to be certain about it. So usually if I'm playing a game, I'll get in my plays and I'll be like, yeah, and balance might be an issue for you. I don't know. I can tell you whether we felt it or not. That I'll mention, but I will not say there are balance issues because I just don't feel qualified to say there are balance issues unless I get a ton of plays under my belt, and I usually don't get that many plays by the time I review a game. Like, I feel, to say a game has balance issues around factions, I feel I'd have to play each of the relevant factions like 3 or 4 times. It's a lot. I can touch upon my experience, but there's a difference between saying I am concerned that there are balance issues as opposed to there are balance issues. It's a balance, not pun not intended. So that's one example of something where I can see why Tom might have been frustrated with it. Another example is that last dagger in the back thing where you can take the kill. There are aspects of Ignite. Ignite, by the way, I didn't mention this. It's a deck building area. It's a deck building dudes on a map kind of style game. You're building your own deck. You have your characters. Deck building skirmish game. That's what I'm looking for. Deck building skirmish game. You're going to be skirmishing around the map. You're going to be using cards to move, using cards to attack, to defend, to shoot arrows across the board, to manipulate the terrain, the elements, all these different fun little things. It is a game full of powers and abilities and deck building and skirmish, all of which I generally like. There are aspects of the game that I did not love, and there are aspects of why I'd complain about it, but they're all aspects that go into why it's not a perfect game for me, but it's a game I enjoy. And so I will be reviewing it. My review will be fairly favorable, potentially with all the various complaints that I have, but fairly favorable. I know that because I've played the game and I like the game. And the part that I'm struggling with, and I don't know how I'm going to handle it, is do I in any way acknowledge the existence of Tom's review in my review? You see, the practical reality is normally I wouldn't. For the most part, normally I try not to reference other media when talking about my own media in the moment of the review, because it's like, it can feel out of place. Now, I've done it before. I've done it with Either Fields. I've done it with other games. There are times where I definitely do address the elephant in the room, so to speak. So with Either Fields, Shut Up and Sit Down, I just put out a scathing review on Either Fields, and I had to address the elephant in the room. I didn't have to. I made a choice to. I may choose to do the same with Ignite. I haven't figured that out. This is a completely long tangent to the fact, completely derailed, I apologize for that, completely derailed to the point of I haven't actually tabled Ignite since I got it. Not because of Tom's review, but because I've played Ignite, and so the excitement of getting that new game tabled, I don't need. I feel like I have played it. I feel like I have experienced it. For me, at this point, my main rush to try to get it tabled is the fact that I feel very badly for the creator that the only real review out there is a strong trashing of the game. But the flip side is that also to a certain extent adds to my hesitancy. Do I want to sit there and put out a favorable review on a game that was so publicly trashed? That can go into the whole genre of, oh, Alex's review is like, just a hype machine. It's not a hype machine. It's a good game. It's a fun experience. Either way, these are problems unrelated to the whole Fooled by the FOMO. Ignite is a game I need to get tabled. This is my number 3. Maybe I'll read the rules this weekend. I have so many rule books I need to read. That's my number 3. My number 2 is this one. Again, apologies for there's lots of stacks of games here. We got Altar Quest. Altar Quest, The Ruins of Arkenspire. I mean, this is just one of the boxes of Altar Quest. Altar Quest is a game that this is the only one on the table that I wonder if it will leave before getting played. Even above Petrichor. And I don't have a good answer as to why. You see, Altar Quest is a game that has been set up twice by me. The rulebook has been read twice by me. I know the basics of how to play, but I haven't actually sat down and played it, and I don't have a firm answer as to why. It's one of those games that kind of entered my, you gotta get this played now, Alex, and then didn't happen a few times, and then from there has shifted into the, whatever, there are other games I want to get tabled. Now, the rulebook's not the best. That certainly contributes to the problem, similar to Cloudspire. Something about the game became less compelling as time went on for me. I don't know why. I never actually played it. It just became less compelling. It was a very popular game. It was very well liked. Got a lot of favorable feedback from various reviewers. And for me, kind of went from, I really want to play this game, to just less and less of a need to play this game. I don't have an answer as to why. I don't have an answer as to why. Just something about this dungeon crawling experience using the MDS, the modular deck system, where you have enemies, you have the environment, and you have the heroes, I think. There are 3 different decks that you're playing within the system. A system similar to Sentinels of the Multiverse. It's just something that Blacklist Games, that the Sailor Brothers have used in a few other games from, and let's not get talking on the, let's not get started on the drama behind Blacklist Games. There's drama, not the point of this video, and I already went on one long tangent. I don't need another. But yeah, Altar Quest is a game that I hope to get tabled. I have one particular person who keeps asking me if I've tabled, and the answer is no. The answer is still that I'd like to. Maybe soon, maybe not. The nice part of things is, now that I'm full-time in content creation, I have been slowly making progress forward and slowly knocking out more things. The practical reality, though, is that with the backlog that I have of just everything, the backlog of anything from fixing stuff in my house, to playing games, to responding to emails, to selling games, there's a whole bunch of things that I've constantly been pushing off, as over the past 2 years I've pushed myself more and more. But that means that a few weeks of full-time only does a tiny dent in that backlog, and some of that backlog is just playing games. And in the case of Altar Quest, I hope to get to it eventually. I don't want it to leave before I play it. But I'm not making any guarantees, because I never really do. And number one, as I grab another box over here, I need a better system. I need shares or something I can put off the side. Number 1 is Tainted Grail. Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon. Tainted Grail is one that I have not played, and I've been meaning to play. The good news is now I have an incentive to play, in addition to the general incentive of play games that you back, that you like, that you want to actually own, but I have an additional incentive to play, and it's an incentive that has worked for me in the past, which is Tainted Grail. By the time I got this, I opted for 1-wave shipping, which meant I got this well after. I backed the game. I was part of the original Kickstarter, and I backed, there only is one Kickstarter, and I was so excited for it, and I made the mistake of going for 1-wave shipping. I was like, I don't want to pay that extra fee. I will get it later. That was the first time I did 1-wave shipping. It's not the last time, but I've learned that that's generally a mistake. Recent Come drama and Marvel Zombies aside, potentially. So by the time I got Tainted Grail, people had been excited about it. People had played their core box. People had gotten over all the general initial excitement about Tainted Grail, and by the time I got mine, I was still excited for it, but I was excited with the giant caveat of, well, I'll get to it. I'll get to it eventually. It doesn't help that I backed this at the non-Sundrop version, which was a huge mistake. I don't know what I was thinking. I didn't know better at the time. And so I got my miniatures, which are fine, but nothing compared to the Sundrop miniatures, which are significantly nicer. I'm not willing to trade up, at least not until I've actually sat down and tabled it and enjoyed it, but Tainted Grail is a epic narrative storytelling game, 7th Continent adjacent in terms of what it's doing, and one that supposedly is incredibly good. The ratings are excellent. There are concerns and complaints around grind, which is a degree of something that's, Awakened Realms has had with other games, but there are also already solutions in terms of how you address that grind to have it not be as much of an issue, and those are solutions that I will happily embrace as I need to as I dive into this experience. Now, the reason this one will get tabled sooner rather than later is because the practical reality is that Awakened Realms has said that they are coming out with the next version of Tainted Grail. The next, I don't know if it's standalone, I don't know if it's an expansion, I have to double check, but they will have more content for this game, which gives me that incentive that I need of prioritizing this to the front of the queue. I want to play it anyway, make no mistake. I've wanted tables for a while, it just kind of sat in the background, not being prioritized, but I will be playing this likely sooner than most of these games. Not all. There are a few here I definitely want to get played. I'd love to play Dinosaur World, War of Whispers, Into Deep, Ignite. I mean, I'd love to play all of them, but there's some that I'm still trying to get that play locked in. But in the case of Tainted Grail, it may well be the first one I actually sit down and table because of the fact that there's another reason to jump into it now, in addition to the fact that I want to play it anyway. And so we'll see. But these are 10 games. These are 10 games, 11 if you count Townsfolk Tussle as technically on the table as well. 11 different games that I backed, that I was excited about, that I got, and that I just didn't play. And again, I get a lot of Kickstarters. This is a small selection of the games I actually get. Most of them I do table. Not that I necessarily keep them. At the end of the day, when I table a game, it's often to say, hey, I was excited by you, and I was excited by you for a reason. Let's see if you're actually a game for me or not. And then I sit down and I play those games, and hopefully I enjoy them, but just as often I find out that it's okay. It's not a game for me, and it's time to move on, sell or trade it to the next person, and find out if it's a game for them. We all have different tastes, we all have different opinions, but you can't know if you like a game if it's sitting on your shelf. And that's why, despite the alliteration in the title, that's why I called this video Fooled by the FOMO. Because it's the FOMO that pulls you in, it's the need to have the thing that pulls you in, but if I can't even make the time and priority to actually play it, somewhere along the line I made the wrong judgment call. That's why I feel, to a certain extent, I've been fooled by the FOMO. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, And as always, have a good one.